Girl, you've got questions. Questions about your body and how to feel good in it, about your hormones and how to keep them in check. Questions about your sex life and your whole health. Can you imagine having a best girlfriend who was also a triple board certified OBGYN? A girlfriend doctor you could call and ask or tell her anything. Someone who could show you how to live any stage of life, before, during, or after menopause, in a big, bold, and beautiful way. Well, friends, I'm your girlfriend doctor. I believe you are meant to flourish and shine, to embrace life and awaken to all its possibilities. Let's get there together. Welcome to our show. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Girlfriend Doctor Show. I'm Dr. Anna, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today. You know, this is the season we're entering into spring. I can't wait for spring to get here. And, you know, when you see those blossoms and flowers and the greenery start to start to emerge, you're like, okay, I'm ready for this. I'm so ready for this. And if you are like me, ready for it, especially being in Dallas now where I'm living, we had that terrible ice and snowstorm, and really half of Dallas was frozen, and it was really troublesome. And you think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? What if we don't have power? What's our next right step? And a lot of anxiety can come into play. And we interviewed earlier this month, I interviewed Dr. Caroline Leaf, and her input and if you haven't listened to that episode, go back and listen to it and be sure to get her book, Clean Up Your Mental Mess, because it is just training our brain to really be empowered and to clean up all the clutter. And that's really important because anxiety is such an important issue. And in fact, one of our clients wrote in after that episode, and this is from Amanda, and she wrote in and she said, Dr. Anna, I just feel that every time I take a step forward, I take 2 steps back. And I feel at this point in my life, I should know what I want to do for my life and what my purpose is, but I feel lost, distressed, and, what's the next right step? And so I think that's really important. A lot of times there is that confusion. We don't know what the next right step is, and we're fearful. What can we do? So I think we can't talk enough about this topic. We're worrying about increasing rates of depression, increasing emotional disturbances, increasing reliance on antidepressants. And where is the answer? Truthfully, the answer is empowered within us. And I tell you, I couldn't do anything without my faith, without starting my day with gratitude and prayer and reflecting on where I saw love yesterday, where I laughed and where I could have laughed more. Just that simple practice of doing, that training of my brain to focus, to go to bed thinking about what I'm grateful for and where I've loved and seen loved. And waking up with the same thing, even before getting out of bed, before opening my eyes, I have trained myself to really reflect on all the things that I'm grateful for. At least one thing, right? Where was one place I saw love, felt love, gave love? Where was one place that I laughed at myself, could have laughed at myself more? Where did I see humor? Where could I have laughed more? And that simply has changed my life, changed my physiology. That's part of an alkalinizing aspect that I talk about in my books, The Hormone Fix and Keto Green 16. It's the green part of Keto Green, right? The alkaline part. When we reduce cortisol and increase oxytocin, our physiology is better. And that is just essential. That is groundbreaking. That is like an important check and balance to do with ourselves. Check your urine pH, get my urine pH strips and check that, check to make sure you're getting alkaline. And if not, is it your nutrition? Is it toxic thoughts? Is it chronic stress? Is it perceived loss of control? Is it underlying anxiety? What's happening? So today I brought a dear friend of mine on the show, a woman that I admire tremendously. She has been a leader in, let's say emotional maturity and gaining people, emotional mastery, let's say, and gaining people their confidence back, helping people navigate some of the most difficult circumstances and traumas in their lives. And she is that peace, just such an amazing presence to be around, just an incredibly peaceful person. So I'm going to introduce you today to a dear friend and colleague, Dr. Joan Rosenberg. She has been on pretty much every network out there, PBS, the OWN network, just so much. And she is a California licensed psychologist. She speaks on how to build confidence, emotional strength, resilience, achieving emotional, conversational, and relationship mastery while integrating neuroscience and psychotherapy, also with suicide prevention. She's an Air Force veteran, a professor and graduate of psychology at Pepperdine University in Los Angeles. And her latest book is 90 Seconds to a Life You Love: How to Master Your Difficult Feelings to Cultivate Lasting Confidence, Resilience, and Authenticity. It's a great book. I've given so many copies away, and we're going to dig deep with Joan. Welcome, Joan. It is good to have you here on my virtual couch. It has been so long we've been trying to get together, and it's really nice to see you.
Likewise, I'm thrilled that I'm here. So it's very sweet to be able to talk to you.
Oh, I feel the same. And I'll let our audience know, like Joan and I were just chatting before we started recording, and I'm like, we're not saying another word. Let's do it on air, because we are not alone in this. And we're talking about, we were talking about anxiety, and Joan is the expert in this emotional mastery. And one of the issues is being really vulnerable. Here we're in our girlfriend doctor community, is being really vulnerable with some of the things that I'm dealing with, and maybe Joan's dealing with, other people, maybe you watching right now are dealing with. And one of the things is like for me, it's dating, being anxious and starting to date and feeling like, oh my gosh, like, man, it's vulnerable. Like, as competent women as we are, why is this so challenging?
Yeah, well, again, I think that what it immediately does, Anna, the way I think about it is that it just puts us in an immediate state of vulnerability. And so it's like, I know that I want to invest in this, but there's a part of me that goes, do I want to get hurt again? And the truth of the matter is in order to have what we want, we have to be willing to be hurt. We have to be, and what I mean by being hurt is being disappointed or sad or frustrated or those kinds of things. But intimacy doesn't come without that other part. So the vulnerability, the intimacy does involve our openness and our willingness to actually experience pain.
And how much of that is like bringing up past stuff, like, the past failures, like of my marriage, the past failure of my marriage, the past breakdown of other relationships, and those pieces of the concept of, can I be a good mom, a single mom right now? Can I be a good mom and have someone else in my life? And that is like, there's a huge wall right there.
Well, I see life as a both and. So my immediate answer is yes, of course you can do both. You can be a great single mom, and you can have someone important in your life as well. So it's not in my mind. And again, what we were talking about earlier was that I had it in my mind because what I was saying to you is that I know how I invest myself in relationship. And I didn't have the sense of myself, as much as I live a both and life, I didn't have the sense of myself as being able to get my work out into the world and have that relationship. And it was like, no, it's actually possible to do both. I could have had somebody in my life that was fully supportive of what I was doing and helped support me through that process, as opposed to not. So it really is shifting some of our thinking and even reframing failure, a failed marriage, if you will. It's like, no, you transitioned out of that marriage for whatever reason you transitioned out, and that there were valuable learnings that came with that. It doesn't mean it was failed.
Yeah.
It didn't turn out the way you imagined. And so that's the grief part of it. But that we learn from we can learn from every experience we go through. So it's something that transitioned and didn't turn out the way you imagined. And we can still live this both and world.
Yeah, both and. And so definitely, I like that reframing of transitioned into where I am now, which I never would have seen before. And that's beautiful. And that concept, I think many women and probably men deal with this too. It's like, okay, I have to focus on this one thing, like for you, getting your work out into the world, this mastery, right? Being masterful in one area. How do we have room now to be in this other, opening ourselves up for that ideal imperfect relationship?
Right, right. Again, and what I was saying earlier too is that my values have shifted, right? And on my end, I have gotten a major piece of work out there. There's still much more I want to do, and many more lives that I hope to impact in a really positive way. And I'm also, and I would say we're doing this kind of as hopefully as COVID is winding down, or the impact, the strongest impact of it is winding down, and that I'm also mindful of what the experience of being alone has been like for a year, right? So some things were made much more poignant because there was a lot more opportunity to reflect.
So let's talk about that. What are some of the things that, like being alone, and where do you live now?
I'm in Los Angeles.
Los Angeles. And so
Yeah,
that's been pretty isolating, right?
yeah,
And what
yeah.
you've been dealing with. And so how has this, like, how have you transitioned in this year?
Well, I think that the immediate thing that happened was there was actually an upsurge for me in work. Understandably, because people were trying to make sense of, it's like, oh my God, what are we doing? What's going on? How do we handle this? And so there, and the way I looked at this whole time period is that it's been a time period of profound loss and profound grief, along with a heightened sense of vulnerability. And so most people, I think, would identify it as anxiety. I describe it as vulnerability. This
Mhm.
sense, both a kind of a felt body sense, as well as an emotional sense that we could get hurt.
Mhm.
And certainly we have seen and saw all of that, and that so that I was in touch with that kind of level of poignancy. I have a parent that is still alive, and is edging ever so much closer to the century mark, and doing well given the circumstances, and so the inability to connect with family. So I was dealing with sadness that related to that. It was a lot of alone time, and wondering, and again, given the circumstances surrounding the year, because I really saw the year as not just, it wasn't a simple thing. It wasn't just COVID, right? For me, it was like 5 major influences at the minimum, that included not only COVID, the economic downturn, political instability, social unrest, important social unrest,
Yeah.
and climate instability. And so it's like these 5 things happening throughout this whole period. It's been a time of deep reflection, and really heightened also my awareness of the importance of connection and staying well connected during this time.
Mhm. And opening up for that relationship. So having
Absolutely.
an
Absolutely.
authentic relationship. So we touched on a little bit about what Mary Morrissey said to you. So what is it she said, and how is that moving you?
Well, it's that what she said to me was what I said a few moments ago is that I could during this time period have had somebody in my life that was both supportive. That one, I could have somebody in my life, and that person was actually very supportive of what I was doing. So it didn't have to be an either or.
Yeah,
It could have been a both.
both and, right. Yeah. And so, like, now with understanding that, what are next steps?
Well, next steps, I guess it's doing it the way people do it in the 2020s, which is online. So, and at the time of COVID, and at the time of 2020 with all the tech. So it's just right now. It's just a kind of a process of figuring out how to negotiate that. So
Yeah. Yeah. And to, again, just that part of vulnerability, opening yourself up, and letting people know, we had Bella Gandhi on at the end of last year, and, talking about dating, and she has her Smart Dating Academy. And so I have been working with her and one of her coaches, Lindsay, and it's been really important for me because it can fall back into work mode, putting
Sure.
relationships on a shelf and not following kind of a flow of just, okay, there is definitely someone's out there for us, and it's
Right.
just a process, and not to let anxiety or that vulnerability put us back into our shell. You and I are both I think you're introverted naturally. I'm naturally introverted, and so like it's so easy for me to just like get back into my cozy
Uh-huh.
comfort cocoon.
Right. No, yeah, no, it is a constant push. I think the other thing that becomes really important here, Anna, is that it's also paying attention to really what you value.
Yes.
And so it's sitting down and actually generating a list of what you want. And my thing is that it's not a matter of just putting down kind of, and I'm not just talking about kind of physical characteristics or those kinds of things. I'm talking about the whole thing where you're addressing what you want at an emotional level, maybe at a spiritual level, physical level, and not just what you want in the person, but what you want in terms of how the relationship functions.
Mm-hmm.
So it's then writing down that the warmth and affection comes easily and is frequent, or that we engage comfortably well, if you will, in conflict, and the effort is to always resolve that all the way through. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a win-win for both of us. So it's also generating the kinds of values that you hold for the relationship too.
Yeah, completely. One of the things that Bella Gandhi said is like she asked me, "What are the things you want in a relationship?" And sure enough, I was like, I could fire off a whole bunch of a whole bunch of things. And then she asked me, "Well, think of some people in your life that make you happy." And you're just happy to be around them, you're happy to be with them. And so I did, and she goes, well, what are those, why are you happy with these people, what makes you happy? She
Right.
said you stay in a relationship because you're happy, not because of your wants. What makes you happy
Yep.
are your
Yep.
needs.
Yep.
And I reflect on that, and someone I dated, he said, like when you think of someone and you smile, that's a really good sign,
Yeah.
right?
No. Absolutely. Yep. Yep. And laughter is a super important one for me. So yeah.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Joan, I want to circle back in this
Sure.
concept of like when we are feeling this anxiety, like, okay, so here, getting out in the world, meeting people, having all those challenges, and that anxiety is coming up. In your book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love, you teach us how to, regain kind of that. It's almost like I wouldn't call it a reality check, but explain this process and help us through
Well,
it.
well, there's a couple different things here. So for me, there's layers. So the first part of it for me is actually, let me start with taking away the word anxiety.
Okay.
I'm a psychologist, but I'm not a big fan of the word anxiety. And I'm also not a big fan of the word fear. So go figure, right? I'll explain why I don't like that word, but or either one of them. But though my thing early on, when I got into my professional life, was noticing how difficult it was for people to experience and kind of move through unpleasant feelings. And as much as our thinking can really trip us up, what I found is that our difficulty handling these unpleasant feelings actually was worse. That people had no sense of being capable in life or feeling capable in life or handling what life kind of throws at us or we deal with, if they were not able to handle these unpleasant feelings. So then I started kind of over time gathering, it's like, what are these feelings? And repeatedly, a certain number of feelings kept on coming up. But it was also, well, then how do and I'll talk about that in a moment, but it's like, then how do I get them to actually stay in them? So what ended up happening as the years progressed is that I sort of came up with a formula that a friend of mine called the Rosenberg Reset. So the language stuck. It was like, oh, okay, kind of like that. And so the reset is one choice, 8 feelings, 90 seconds. And the one choice is helping people lean into awareness as opposed to avoidance. So the idea here is that you want to be as aware of and in touch with as much of your moment-to-moment experience as possible. So it means staying away from distraction.
Mm-hmm.
What's distraction look like? Well, substance use, like, alcohol or drugs, social media, screens.
Mm-hmm.
For men, more often than women, it's sex or porn. Or it could be women a little bit more than men, could be shopping.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, so there's all sorts of distractions we can get into, and those are the real obvious ones. But harsh self-criticism, for instance, for me is a distraction. Having feelings about having feelings is a distraction.
Oh,
And
wait, let's talk about that, because that's got to be a very universal one. I mean, having feelings about having feelings, like, you just end up with a cycle.
Yeah, right. Well, so if I'm angry, then I'm disappointed. That's a distraction from the disappointment,
Mm-hmm.
right? If I'm disappointed that I'm angry, then it's a distraction from the anger, right? So there's, and I think I've identified at least 35 different ways that we distract ourselves in the book, and some of them are as nuanced as that. And so yes, that we get into all these sorts of ways of distracting from what's really going on. So I want people to lean into the awareness and to move as much as they can away from the avoidance. And then the second part is the 8 feelings. So the 8 feelings are sadness, shame, helplessness, anger, vulnerability, embarrassment, disappointment, and frustration. And so it's like, why these 8? And because people go to fear, anxiety, guilt, no, none of them are on that list. It's these 8 because they're the most common everyday reactions, most common spontaneous everyday reactions to things not turning out the way we want or the way we perceive that we need. Mm-hmm. So it's the everydayness. It's that quality is why I chose those. And then the 90 seconds part is really much more tied to the method. So then what's the deal with leaning into unpleasant feelings? Well, the first thing is understanding that we're one interconnected whole. We're not a brain or mind and then a body. We're actually one unified whole. And in being that unified whole, it's understanding that our body, most of us tend to come to know what we feel emotionally through bodily sensation first. So think the heat of embarrassment into the face. I might see your redness, or you might see my redness, but what the person is experiencing internally is probably the heat, right? And the heat is the bodily sensation, as an example, or a kind of a downward sensation in the chest for sadness or disappointment, right? Yes. Or we can come up with all sorts of different examples, but there's signals, body signals that cue us to what we're experiencing, and it happens so quickly we don't separate the thought and the feeling, the bodily sensation or the feeling itself. And then the third part of it is actually an observation that was made by Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor, who wrote the book, My Stroke of Insight. And in the book, what she says is that when a feeling gets triggered, there's a rush of biochemicals into the bloodstream that activate bodily sensations. So it's the bodily sensations I was just talking about. And those same biochemicals flush out of the bloodstream in roughly 90 seconds. So what I began to do was to understand, one, that it wasn't that we didn't want to feel the whole range of what we felt. It's that we didn't want to feel the bodily sensation that helped us know what we were feeling emotionally. And that was the thing that we were trying to get away from, was that bodily sensation.
That's what we're distracting ourselves from.
Exactly. So that if I could get people to understand that what they were trying to run away from when they were trying to run away from a feeling was simply the bodily sensation that was uncomfortable, and that they understood that it was less really than probably about 90 seconds. So a given bodily sensation wave was roughly 90 seconds in nature. People would typically go, well, I can do 90 seconds, right? So my whole point here is that if you can lean into or experience one or more of 8 unpleasant feelings, let me rephrase this. If you can ride one or more bodily sensation waves, and the or more is important here. So if you can ride one or more bodily sensation waves of one or more of 8 unpleasant feelings, you can go pursue anything you want in life.
Wow. I mean, that is a powerful statement. And actually, we'll break for a second. And when we come back, I'm going to share with our audience, Joan, what you walked me through at Mindshare last year, or a couple of years ago now in California, when I was having had an incident. So we'll come back and talk about that in just a second. Yep. All right. So Joan, remember when we were in California, we were at a Mindshare event that JJ Virgin was leading, and there was the speakers on stage for the 5-minute presentations. And one of the speakers, one of the presenters, like totally dissed me and my product as ineffective for her. And so I was sitting there with you, and all of a sudden, like, I felt embarrassed, shamed, attacked. And you said, you walk me through that situation again. I was like, you asked me, I said, I'm feeling attacked. And you said, don't go there.
Well, I think the reason I said that is because the notion of being attacked put you immediately in a victim stance.
Ah, that's it.
Right. Yep. And I didn't want you to take that position, and that if you were, I don't remember the exact specifics around it, but I mean, I do remember all of that incident happening. I'm just trying to remember the very specifics of what I said. I know I would have said that would have put you in the position of being a victim. And what I wanted you to do is instead to handle it from the experience of you being self-empowered.
Yes.
So that rather than being victimized, you could have a reaction of, you know what, I'm angry about that she did that. I've done nothing wrong. The product's a great product. What was the appropriateness of her saying what she said, right? And a variety of things like that could help you kind of be in the experience, feel the embarrassment, but no shame, mm-hmm. right? Shame becomes kind of the judgment part of embarrassment, right? There is really a quality of judgment to shame, and to then just go, all right, I'm embarrassed, but this is something she did. It's not what I did, right? Mm-hmm. So it was walking you through a variety of those kind of, if you will, bodily sensation waves, and also helping you reframe the situation.
Yes. And I think reframing was really powerful. You were asking, okay, what are you feeling in your body right now? And that was focusing back right into my body, right out of essentially out of my head where it was going. And I see that connection between shame and judgment. And that's really a powerful connection. And I think a lot of times as women, we can deal with that in so many situations. And so recognizing that there's judgment with that, and we never want to judge, right? So that we can let that go. So being brought back into my body, like, okay, where are you feeling this? What are you feeling right now? Like, where in your body are you feeling this? And that was powerful. I was like feeling it in my heart, like my chest. Like I was like, wait, I definitely felt a physical manifestation. You're like, just breathe. So it was just go into breathing and just focusing, separating her, her part from me, and that separating, not allowing myself to be in the victim mode, and to feel empowered. Say, okay, well, that's, should have asked me. I would have told her how to use it correctly. I mean, what was the situation? There's got to be another, right? There's another situation here, or there's some, maybe, is there a reason before, you know, I mean, and not even trying to get into that person's head to say, well, why would she even say something?
Right. And the point at which you try to do that, you're actually out of your own experience.
Yeah.
Now what, and many people do this, that they end up trying to figure out why someone would do something, but now you're making up a story,
Yeah.
right? And it's actually not about the story, it's about our response. And it's how we handle our response. So whether it's being able to just kind of, to your point, get back in touch with your body and go, all right, wait a minute, what is it that I'm really experiencing about this? What is my emotional reaction to it? And then what's my reasoned reaction to it, right? So that you can actually have both reactions going. It's like, oh, wait a minute, okay, was that really appropriate for her to do? No, not clean. That was kind of a shot below the belt, didn't feel good. But I know my product is good. I know a lot of people are satisfied. So then it's starting to use your reason then with your emotional response.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. Can you give us another example and walk us through how we do that in the heat of the moment?
Let me go the relationship route, because that's the temptation especially in conflict is, and I can actually go the other direction too, but the temptation in conflict is to start to escalate and to get uglier and more intense and meaner and crueler and all those kinds of things, right? And and the key here is holding my thing around using both parts of our beingness, if you will, is that holding. I would say three things: holding values in terms of how I want to show up. So if my value in a relationship is to show up as a kind person, then I want to see if I can express myself through that kindness, even if I'm upset. So now I'm in the heat of conflict and I'm aware I'm getting angry and more upset about something. Mm-hmm. But if I'm living through kindness, then I'm going to take a breath before I'm going to respond. So let's say I can feel stuff escalating in me, and I know I don't want to be mean. I know I don't want to say things that I'm going to regret later. I know I don't want to be hurtful because I actually love this person, even if I'm angry in the moment. So it's understanding that I can have angry feelings and be loving too simultaneously. And,
that's a trick.
Well, that's actually a growth move for all of us, mm-hmm. is to be able to hold the healthiest of us, believe it or not, we work towards being able to do that. That might be a daily practice, right? Daily practice of doing the combo of working towards being angry and loving too, or loving and angry too, where there's pleasant and unpleasant simultaneously, as opposed to just seeing someone as all bad or all good. Mm-hmm. And so then it would be, all right, let me take some deep breaths before I respond. I'm going to ride the waves of this intensity of what I'm experiencing. And my thing is
reaction, the physiologic reaction.
Absolutely. And especially when people are angry, I always say, you never speak when you're on the upside of the wave, right? In fact, you keep your mouth shut intentionally.
Yeah, that's a challenge. Whew,
yeah, so
that's one.
You breathe up. You don't get to talk until you're on the downside of the wave, because that's going to give you just enough time to re-engage your thinking, as opposed to just letting the feelings be run out of your mouth and to run off, right? And so my thing is, you take, if you're feeling the intensity of something, you take a deep breath. In fact, I now think of the breath as if you think about riding the wave, then the breath is like the boat you're taking to the shore.
I like that.
So you actually ride the feelings on the breath. So now you're in the heat of the moment. You take a deep breath. You're excited. You want to say stuff. You take a deep breath. You ride the feeling. You feel the intensity start to go down, and then what you do in a softer voice, because now you can respond as opposed to react. You say, you know what? That made me really angry. Or, whoa, that what you just said to me, that really hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Or what you're saying to me right now, or the way you're behaving, totally unacceptable. But it's not about attacking the other person. It's about being clear about what your experience is.
And that's a huge difference, a huge shift from, just being clear. This is how I've been made. This is how I'm feeling right now, or this is what, is coming up in me because
Right.
of the situation. And, just yesterday, actually, because I've been practicing your 90 seconds to a life you love now since your book came out a couple of years ago. We've been trying to get on the couch together here for a long time, Joan.
Yeah,
We
I
have
know.
It's been a long time, but it's come in very handy, and I'll give you another personal situation. So, on one of my dates, date that I had last night, he was a lovely, I was saying, I've met some amazing men, and he's an incredible man. And he was talking about this past relationship that he had. And I started feeling in myself some vulnerability. I felt a little bit like insecure, and all the stuff came up. And I said, no, hold safe space, breathe, recognize that I'm feeling these things. It's not about me. He's not like comparing me or whatever it may be in my head. I was putting myself down, like talking and I was like, okay, 90 seconds. Focus on, just shifting my focus to be in this loving, kind space and not judging myself or the situation, and not definitely, recognizing that this was, I've been doing this for a couple of years now, and it's still like those feelings come up, those insecurities come up, and you're like, and that's fascinating. Another thought I had on the way back today, thinking about a date, and thinking, well, the thought came up, okay, we didn't have a second date. Like, well, was I not attractive enough? I'm like, get that thought right out of your mind. It's not a situation here, because, retraining my brain, okay, focusing on the situation, that's insecurity coming up, not about me. Let's, focus on the positive feelings and shift that train of thought into sexy, attractive, confident, let that separate.
Actually,
That emotion.
can I jump in on that one?
Yeah.
Because that one is, there's a lot of things that are important to me in the work that's now out there in terms of the book. But harsh self-criticism is like, you want to hear me on a soapbox for a few hours. I want to jump on this for a second, because what you're doing. So you had a great day, guy didn't call back, and now you're into harsh self-criticism.
Yes.
What you insecure, and because that's not a feeling in my mind. That's inadequacy. That's not a feeling in my mind. Those are judgments. So anywhere there's an evaluation, anywhere there's a judgment, there's harsh self-criticism. Anywhere there's harsh self-criticism, there's distraction from unpleasant feelings.
Ah, okay.
So I look at harsh self-criticism as a thought hijack of unpleasant feelings. So rather than going, doggone it, to be kind, or damn, I really had a great time with this guy. How come he didn't call me back? I'm so disappointed. There's the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
It went to, what am I? Not pretty enough, not this enough, not that enough, not what, right? And so the shift is away. We're in charge of what we think. We're not in charge of what we feel. We manage what we feel once it's in our conscious awareness. So you were disappointed, but just that quickly, it turns into harsh self-criticism.
Very well trained in that, apparently.
Well, I think most of us are. And the reason I'm jumping on it, especially for women, Anna, is because of how absolutely destructive or damaging or toxic, or you name it, I think it is. And people get confused. People think that harsh self-criticism equals unpleasant feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Let me reassure you, they are not equal. They're not anywhere near equal. Harsh self-criticism takes you down like this. You know, go 70 floors in an elevator fast, right? Below.
Absolutely, yes.
That's how
Feel it.
quickly you're taking yourself down, and it's unbelievably toxic to our immune system. And you're a fan of the immune system, right?
Yeah.
So it's not that if we go into self-criticism that it actually is equal. We just feel bad, and it's about the same equivalence feeling bad as when we're in unpleasant feelings. Oh no, it's way worse, significantly worse. So the thing that I really want listeners to understand is that you have to put a stop to harsh self-criticism. And the moment you find yourself there, the thing to do is to go, all right, what unpleasant feeling, what occurred just before I went to the criticism? And again, let me give you another very quick example. I was doing an interview. The interviewer, I could hear him, he could not hear me. Fumbling, looking all over the computer, crawling underneath the desk, pulling cords. I mean, you can get the picture, right?
Oh, yeah.
3 or 4 minutes are going by, and it's still like this. And then I hear him say, I'm so embarrassed. And then without missing a beat, it turned into, I'm so stupid, I'm such an idiot. Now, the I'm so stupid, I'm such an idiot is the thought hijack.
Our self-criticism.
Yeah, it's the thought hijack of the embarrassment.
Mm-hmm.
But that's how quickly it happens for all of us.
Wow. Okay. And so when it happens, and are we able to disconnect from that? Like, are you able to not go into that stage of harsh self-criticism? Is it just like that step? You feel like you're about to cross that threshold and you just back into, what am I feeling? This is a feeling of disappointment. This is
Exactly. That you reverse course. And that's the big question. Well, what was harder for me? And if you want to, you can, what was harder for me to bear, know, or feel?
To bear?
B-E-A-R, bear, know, or feel. Yeah. You just go in reverse just to figure that out. What happened just prior to that? And I will tell you, when I'm working with people, if I hear this thread of harsh self-criticism, that's frequently the first thing that I insist that we work on. That's how damaging and toxic it is. I have somebody right now that I'm working with that I've probably been working with about 6 months. So, and she's gotten 3 to 7 days worth of just really trashing herself down to 2 hours, maybe at best. And is very mindful of now when she starts to go down that course, because now going down that course is choiceful, right? It's more in her awareness, and that you can think of the relief that that's provided her. If just breaking that pattern. So I want to emphasize this because of how destructive it is, and there's no way I want to play it down. I actually want to play up the importance of how critical it is for you to stop being mean to yourselves.
Oh my goodness. That is something that is, I mean, so powerful. And thank you for bringing that up and just really making a point of this, because, you know, as trained as, you know, we can feel like we are, that harsh, that nasty bitch can still show up on your shoulder. Right? I mean, that's like, oh gosh, get that nasty bitch off your shoulder. That's what I tell my clients. I'm like, it's just true. And then we can actually do it to ourselves. And we would never want our child or best friend to say things like that about themselves, or to believe things like that about themselves. So being able to even be our own best coach, right? At first, learn these skills and then share it with those around us. Thinking, you know, right now of my daughter, when, she has, you know, just being critical of her barrel racing right now. It's just like, you know, struggling with some of that. And now I can identify that as harsh self-criticism. And, you know, Joan just being able to say, okay, well, really, what are you feeling? And then what do you do? Like, what's your next step, or when you're dealing with that?
Well, the next step is actually then ride the wave.
Ride the
right?
wave.
Ride the wave. And the beauty of it, so here's the beauty of it, Anna, and so it's breathing. So so now you're aware that you're into harsh self-criticism. You step back from that and you go, all right, what was really going on? Oh, so if we use your example, you were disappointed. Guy didn't call back. All right. So now I'm in the disappointment. Again, it's not languishing there. It's right. It's not getting caught up in that, but it's like, oh, bummer. I'm just disappointed. That seemed like it had possibilities to it. Right. So now you're riding the wave. And then if you stay present to the feeling, my experience is that you start to gain insights. So it's like, oh, well, what was it that kind of captured my attention about him in the first place? And then let's say you pause and you reflect a little bit on that. Or what was it about this that kind of triggered me in this way? So that was there any pattern to my reaction? So now once you're breathing and you're pausing and reflecting, you're starting to gain insights, and you go, oh, wait a minute. He was actually just like that other guy I dated that was actually kind of manipulative in the end. Maybe there's an aspect to that behavior that, and turns out, might not be so good for me after all. Or who knows what you'll come up with, right?
Oh yeah, for sure. Mm-hmm.
But then you gain insights, and then those insights are available for making decisions, expressing yourself, or taking action. So when you stay present to the feeling, then you gather actually much more information that, along with reasoning, you can then use the emotional information for something else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then gaining that insight. So also breaking from what it sounds like, just breaking from old patterns of behavior,
Right.
old patterns that haven't served us, and becoming free from those.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I love this conversation. And Joan, again, thanks for that, focus on the harsh self-criticism. I think for our audience, we have, always there's another thing to learn. And this practice of our 90 seconds to a life you love. Joan, you have a copy of your book right there. I want to just let people know where to get your amazing book and to find you.
They can find me easiest, drjoanrosenberg.com. And or if they punch in my name, there's there's 2 TED Talks that are out there. I'm on social media. They can find me on Instagram and on Twitter and those kinds of places as well. Let's see, and the book can actually be purchased anywhere. So I believe it's, certainly I know it's Amazon. I know it's at Barnes and Noble and Books A Million. And so wherever people buy books, I would say, go buy many of them.
Yes, drjoanrosenberg.com. And also that website, your website is a great resource for people. And we'll have links in our show notes and more information on your site and where to get your books. We'll put links in there for everything. So I want to thank you so much. And final words for us as we're, just now, this has been for me an emotional conversation. I'm like, okay, 90 seconds. Let me ride the wave some more, Joan. I'm riding the wave some more.
You know what? I want to take your opportunity here, and I want to add one other piece.
Yes.
And that has to do. I'm going to do the flip side of the coin of harsh self-criticism.
Okay.
And that is the importance of taking in compliments. Because as good as women are in particular at leveling harsh self-criticism, right? They're just as bad at accepting compliments. But I want you to put these 2 things together, because if you engage in a lot of harsh self-criticism and you refuse to accept compliments and really absorb them, then there's no place for good to come in.
Mm-hmm.
And I know women get caught in this imposter syndrome as an example. Well, both of those are operating, right? There's only bad that's being directed towards the self, and there's no good coming in. So I really want to emphasize those 2 things. One is how important it is, again, to put a stop to the harsh self-criticism. And I will also emphasize how equally important it is for you to start to absorb the goodness that's directed towards you. Compliments are a reflection of you back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not coming out of the blue. They're actually somebody holding a mirror up to you and saying, this is how I experience you. This is how I see you. So it's an experience of you, or it's an experience with you. And it's super important to absorb that. And when you do that, you start to up-level your own sense of self and self-image. So I couldn't resist also adding that one piece in.
I am so glad, because that is so important. And it's been a practice to learn too, when receiving a compliment, to receive it and not knee-jerk react to give one back. Just receive it and accept it. And that is a feminine trait too, just to receive that compliment. And I like how you said absorb it, to really let it
You take it, you
penetrate.
metabolize it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Because
that,
again, I do. There's certain things that I think really change us, and speaking up would be one. Taking in compliments would be another, and that it's just super important for us to do that, and not to play it down or devalue it.
mm-hmm. Yeah, no, and definitely can do better in both those areas too. All right, you've put me up with a challenge. So really working on up leveling this process, the
Right.
recognizing that habit of the harsh self-criticism, where that's coming into play,
Right.
stepping back, engaging into the feelings. Where is this coming from? Where am I feeling it? How am I feeling it? And differentiating. And then also that self-compliments and receiving compliments from others. And then also giving heartfelt compliments to those around. And
Yes.
yeah. So thank you, Joan. Thanks so much for being here. And I want to thank all of you in our community, in our Girlfriend Doctor Club, in our community, at our Keto Green community on Facebook, Instagram, wherever you are. I am just grateful for you guys to be in this community. Please be sure to click on this video and share it with your friends. Give us your feedback. Write down in the comments below what you're committing to based on what you've learned today. What is a practice that you're going to focus on or to practice moving forward from our conversation today with Dr. Joan Rosenberg? You guys, and find her, pick up her book, 90 Seconds to a Life You Love. There's pearls, gems. I mean, it is a masterpiece. It is a essential read. And I'm going to go back and read it again because it's been a couple of years. I have to read it again. And so, and then you can find her at drjoanrosenberg.com. So I look forward to seeing you guys. Be sure to share this episode, and I'll see you next time. Thank you. Thank you for watching this video. Be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel here and get those notifications, and comment below. Let me know your thoughts, what you loved, and what your action step is.